a nice person sometimes.
Yes, you are.
School districts don't like me.
Well, that's okay. Meada has helped several of our families, and she's gone to IEPs with them and consulted with them. And so she has just been a great asset to DSAC, and we're so glad that she's here with us today. She's the principal investigator and director for the Community-Based Work Transition Program, a statewide transition program. She also is an adjunct professor in the Department of Special Ed at the University of Kentucky, with 18 years of teaching experiences at the university level. Meada has over 30 years of experience working with individuals with disabilities. She began working as a recreation therapist for several adult agencies and then began her career as a special education teacher across the K-12 setting. During this time, she developed and implemented the College Connection, a program which provided opportunities for students with moderate and severe disabilities to participate in college life courses and employment as a means of transitioning into adulthood, which is a lot of what your community transition was. I never say that right.
And that happened back in '90s, and we've been trying to get other school districts to look at ways of serving 18 to 21, and it's been, what, how many years, 20? Mm-hmm.
But Meada, every time we come in, we walk in the door, Meada goes, "What are you doing for adults?" I'm like, just a minute, Meada. We're getting there. 30 years of experience, Meada has become an advocate for individuals with disabilities and their families. She provides consultation services to individuals with disabilities and their families, school personnel, and agencies across Kentucky. She's actively involved in several nonprofit organizations, a board member for the Down Syndrome Association of Central Kentucky and Build Inclusion, and is a member of several national and state organizations, such as the co-chair for Kentucky TASH and Kentucky Interagency Transition Council. Meada has several publications and has developed several training modules in the area of working with students with disabilities. In addition, she presents at national, regional, and local training. So,
wow.
I know, impressive. So we love Meada. You will love Meada. And we have a couple of people joining us by webinar. You may hear a beep as other people join in, and just ignore it. So we're just going to go ahead and jump right in, and I will be over here on the computer, and you'll have to point at me when you're ready to.
I can do that. I'm good at pointing. All right. First, I'm going to basically go over a little bit about IDEAL, the Individuals with Disabilities Education and Improvement Act of 2004, and the basis of an IEP. And then I'm going to take you into an IEP example. We're going to go through that IEP and questions and stuff that you need to ask or things you need to make sure you put on your IEP. Okay? And then we'll figure out whatever. So, start the PowerPoint. Need my PowerPoint. We can go to the second slide because I bet some of y'all feel this way. Okay.
I'm sorry. I've got to share my screen. We can see it.
Okay. While she's doing that, I am not an expert. There are no experts in IEPs. Every IEP is different. Every individual is different. Every need is different. So, but I have been in a lot of, myself have had ARC meetings as a teacher. I've gone through the Director of Special Ed certification. So I've gone through practicum and done everything according to IDEA and helped develop our policies and procedures for Jessamine County schools. And I have been at a lot of different parents' ARC meetings across the state. I never asked parents to pay me, but I will tell you one of the best things I ever got from a parent was in Eastern Kentucky. She goes, "I need to give you something for coming." I go, "Okay, I want some pickled corn." And by God, by the time I let you know, pickled corn. So, some of y'all may feel this way. So a kid walks into an IEP meeting. Y'all feel that way? As a professor, I really drilled into my students that students are going to be teachers, that if I walk into an IEP meeting and you're at the IEP meeting and everybody at the school is sitting over there and the parent is sitting over here by themselves, I'm going to throw a tantrum and I'm going to make you look this big. So anytime I go to ARC meetings, I have students going, I'm right here, Meada. I'm right here by the parent. And another thing, parents should never go to ARC meetings alone. And there's a program that Vandy's doing that I'm going to be introducing to Tracy later on this month about an advocacy project we may try to get started to help parents across the state. So, being that, we want to make sure that we're part of the meeting. We're not it's almost like very adversary as soon as you walk into a meeting sometimes, because they are so intimidating. And the school thinks if they have more people, they get more votes. That's not how it is. It's the school and the parent and the student. It doesn't matter how many people there. We don't count. Well, this many people agree. No, it's in the best interest of your son or daughter. Okay, go ahead. Okay.
Can you read it?
I can't I have to pull mine up real quick so I know where we are. Okay, basically the purpose of IDEA, okay? Last time it was reauthorized in 2004. It was aligned to meet No Child Left Behind, where we have highly qualified teachers, everybody's held accountable. And so basically FAPE is to provide a free, appropriate public education in the least restrictive environment possible. Least restrictive environment possible. And the difference, does anybody know what the difference is between gen ed and special ed? The only difference between gen ed and special ed is that in special education, students receive specially designed instructions. That's the interventions and strategies we use to teach the students their skills, their objectives. And then, I forgot what I was going to say.
Gen ed.
And specially designed instruction related services with supplementary aids and services. It's the same thing. All students are still learning the same content. And at the Department of Education, Kentucky Department of Education, you need to make sure you bookmark this. They actually have some really good stuff on there if you can find it. The law, IDEA is passed down, from the federals. It goes down to the states. States either adopt their policies and procedures or they develop their own. For instance, in the state of Kentucky, transition begins at age 14 and the nation begins at age 16. So states can go above and beyond the federal law, but they cannot go below the federal law. Does that make sense? So, FAPE, we want to make sure students are getting specially designed instruction, whatever related services they need to help them progress in the general education curriculum or whatever curriculum they're working on, and we will make sure it's in the least restrictive environment. FAPE also makes sure, you can go ahead, also make sure that there's procedural safeguards in place for parents and students. Like, we have to have consent before we even start evaluating to see if the student has a disability or not, okay? We have to have consent before we invite any outside agencies to your IEP. So making sure there's a procedural safeguards in place for parents and students. For instance, you can view your records at any time. You have the right to view all your students' record at any time. You just go tell the school, I want to see my student's record, which will blow their mind. And when you get those records, I want to see them, because I'll be honest with you, when I go anymore, as a teacher, I knew exactly what strategy my students I use to help my students to learn. Now when I see IEPs, I see that specially designed instruction, and they have like 10 strategies. As a person, or as a parent, I want to know which one of those strategies you're using and which one is working instead of 10. So that's a very big pet peeve for me. We want to make sure that you can look at your data, make sure that the student is progressing when what all their IEP goes and into the general education curriculum. The next one is, this is very important. You can see this is the staircase, and underneath the staircase is the special education classroom. This is notorious for school districts to hide special ed students. One of my very first practicums back in the 80s was in a very rural eastern Kentucky town. I was with my mentor and my advisor and professor, and he's just laughing the whole time. He goes, "Yeah, I really think you're going to enjoy this class." And so we get to the office, and I go, "Hi, how are you?" "Oh, yeah, do you remember what the class is?" And Dr. Schuster goes, "Yeah." So he takes me out of the office. We go through an auditorium, okay? And then we go through this real dark hallway that leads into the cafeteria. We go through the cafeteria, and where the boiler room is, there's a door. So we go through the boiler room, down these steps, and there was this wonderful FMD classroom. Wrong. So placement in the school is so important for students. That's why we really need to look at least restrictive environment for everything, Okay, so placement. These are just some definitions, such as special education is just specially designed instruction with related service and supplementary aids and services to help the student meet their goals and progress in general education. Related services are those other supports the students may need to be able to be independent and to, again, meet their IEP goals. Supplementary aids and services are presentation materials. It doesn't, when you talk about supplementary aids and services, you want to make sure you're not changing the curriculum. The curriculum, when it's being changed, sometimes the teachers do not know how to grade that. We'll talk more about that. So supplementary aids, related services, I just listed them all for you. What I found out in Fayette County, that a lot of parents didn't know, do you know they offer music therapy? Yes, they do. Ask for it. This is what happens. We have all this stuff. Certain people are getting certain things. It depends on who you are, what you get, and what you get. So music therapy. Think about when you're looking at the related services, you can see recreation and community experiences is something that they may need. So look at those related services, and if there's something in there that you think your son or daughter would need, tap into it. So past related services. The recreation and therapeutic recreation. Hey, I was a therapeutic recreation. It's fun. Okay. Okay, go ahead. All right. Least restrictive environment. This is so important because this is, I'm going to go through what the process of the IEP, but I'm going to go ahead and start now. What happens with the IEP, once you develop it, the very last thing you do in that ARC meeting is go, where is the best place to implement this IEP? And you're supposed to start with Gen Ed, okay? In the real world, oh, have a nice day, yeah, she's going to continue with Miss Hall, yeah, she's doing really good in there, see you later. Okay, you really need to start thinking about the least restrictive environment, especially if your children are young, because they should be included as much as possible. All right, they really should be included. I don't care what they have behavior issues, we work on that. We have strategy, so make sure you do that. There's a continuum. I don't know if you'll be able to see all this. Click it.
Click it.
You know, just go ahead and keep clicking it until it all comes up. I forgot. There you go. So first place is general education without any support. General ed with a collaborative teacher. I, as an FMD teacher, got to collaborate U.S. history. I loved it. Okay? Of course, I had to study every night. General education placement with an itinerant specialist, maybe a vision itinerant. A student has a vision impairment. They'll go in and help the student. Resource rooms, gen ed with resource room, part-time gen ed, part-time gen ed, special ed, full-time special education classroom. That's your FMD and your EVP. Special day, residential, home, and institutions are the most restrictive environments.
Can you define FMD as restrictive?
Okay. I have an acronym sheet that I'll give to you that you all can get off because that's the biggest game. When I teach this class in the fall, it's for masters and initial certifications that are getting their masters and teaching certification in the core content at the high school level. And they get one special ed class. We only meet 6 times. They get 12 hours of instruction of special ed. We want to know why inclusion is not working at the high school level, okay? So, but the thing is, I make sure they understand that this is a continuum and that students really need to be hearing the gen ed curriculum. Who's to say that Tori's not going to go to college? Who's to say that she can't learn or whatever theory that is that I don't even know what to say? So this is the continuum. And the school should be showing you data, why this student cannot be in the gen ed class. Well, because she needs extensive supervision during these times. She needs to have one-on-one instruction during these times, okay? So think about that. All right. These are just some concepts that, hold on, I'll go here, that kind of led to, that supports the IEP. They're major principles of IDEA. And what those major principles are is zero reject. The school cannot assume that there's not a person out there with a disability that needs to be in the education setting. What happens every February, the school district has to do this thing called Child Find, and they will put up flyers all over the community, the health department, the courthouse, the library, grocery stores, and it says, do you have or do you know of a student that may have a disability? Please contact us. So they do, every school district is required to do that every year, okay? So zero reject means we're not going to reject anybody. Everybody can be educated and should be educated. Free public education, we already talked about. We want that in the least restrictive environment. We want to make sure that the assessments are appropriate for our students when they're being assessed. If they are nonverbal, they need to use a nonverbal test. And evaluation, this is the worst. When I was doing IEP meetings, and still to this day, I had parents that would cry during the reevaluation meeting. Have you all ever been through a reevaluation meeting? And what does it tell you, mostly?
What they cannot do.
What they cannot do, because they use all these standardized tests. And on these all standardized tests, it's either they can do it or they can't do it. So there's this thing called COACH. It is an IEP planning document. You can go through different areas, academic, community, reading, and all this stuff, and you score your son and daughter on, is this an emerging skill? Are they partially doing it, or are they skillful at it? Okay? That also will help you develop your present level performance that we're going to talk about, because it tells us what the student can do, so we have the strengths right there, and then the coach will also show you what the student needs to be working on, and those could be the weaknesses and the goals and stuff that we look at for next year or this year. Okay?
Who uses that?
Coach. I used to teach. I can do all kinds of training.
Yeah.
I can do a training on coach. We could all, I could come here one day and we could all meet and we could all do everybody could do a coach together if you wanted to do that.
We did it with Emily in one of her IEPs, and we had, the facilitator was trained in it at Veterans Park. So, it was like an all-day meeting, but it really was a lot more, how can we work on the skills that she has, and how can we, it was a lot more positive than, well, she can't do that, well, she can't do that. Well, given the mean and the mode, blah, 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 you know, and so it took the staff, and we had to push a little bit because the staff was with us all day. It was an all-day training thing, but we walked out with a binder, and we were all on the same page, and it was very positive. So I don't know if the facilitator's not trained, but if we were trained, or if you get some facilitators trained, you know. So, but it's a good program, and I don't know if anybody at KDE offers it.
School systems don't know, because the teacher doesn't want to do it.
It's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work, but as a teacher, that's my responsibility, is to get to know your son and daughter. My responsibility is to teach them and make sure I understand what their strengths and weaknesses are. And how do I do that? This is one way I can do that. So we can have a coach day if you all want to. But it is a great document. Actually, I'll send Tracy the parent interview, and she can send it all out to you. So put COACH down. COACH, acronyms. I have a lot of resources. It's unreal how many resources. And I've taught almost every special ed class there is to take. And evaluation. We want to make sure the person who's doing the evaluation also understands the evaluation and can explain it to you. So when you're going over, I had a friend that went to an ARC meeting with a parent not too long ago, and for some reason they couldn't find a gen ed teacher to be in an IEP meeting with them. And they go, oh, we'll get the orchestra teacher. No. Gen ed teachers need to be people that are knowledgeable of the gen ed curriculum. Can you believe that?
It should be a gen ed teacher that is collaborating with them.
Yes.
I've been to IEP meetings where they pull in a gen ed teacher from pre-cal. Like, I'm pretty sure Emily's not in pre-cal.
Yeah.
You know, well, you know, it's his planning period, so we pulled him in so we didn't have to get his up. I don't need any information from him.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you know, like, I need the social studies teacher.
Your students, your son and daughter's information is to be held confidential. There are 2 folders that students with IEPs have. They have the main due process folder that has all the originals at central office, and then at their school building, they also have another due process folder that you put all the copies of everything in. You also, when anybody looks at your son or daughter's IEP or folder or whatever, they have to sign that they've done this, and only people that really need to be doing this are only people that have educational interest in your son or daughter. Sometimes we have practicum students and student teachers that may want to be a part of it as well. So, confidential information, also procedural safeguards we kind of talked about. Consent is very important, child find, making sure we find the students, and technology, come on. Isn't it awesome? I'm sure there's a brand new thing right now we can use. So technology plays a big part in FAITH because a lot of our students can use assistive technology to learn their goals and objectives. I mean, it's not only academic, it's AT in the community, AT working in recreation and leisure, AT in the home setting. When I was a teacher, way back when, at the high school, I had 2 students, and we did this thing called home training. And these 2 students, what we did was myself or one of my instructional assistants, or paraeducators, would go to the house, wake them up, and go through the morning routine with them, teaching them, get up, make your bed, showering. And I remember my OT came because I had the best teaching job. I was so fortunate I had worked in Jessamine County because I just really got it. Tammy had moved into a new house, and so we were trying to figure out, she couldn't pull the shower thing, turn the shower on the bathtub. And so the OT came, of course, just like that, she put a little string, here, it works now. I'm like, you've been trying to figure this out for 2 weeks. And a student, once they they did chores, they made their own lunch to take to school. A community-based work transition bus would come and pick them up, and depending on what day it was, depended on where they went. Usually on Mondays, everybody either had a banking account, a savings account, ATM card, checking account, and they would go to the bank and do their banking on Monday. And that's called community-based instruction. And community-based instruction is not a field trip. This is what happens in school districts. Oh, we're going to go bowling, and we're going to go watch a movie, and we're going to eat pizza. Every Friday. That is a field trip. Community-based instruction is actually going out and teaching community skills. Like, I'm going to teach the student how to use the next dollar strategy to pay for their purchase. And I'm going to collect data. Ooh, that's a novel concept, I know, for some school districts. Okay? So, personnel development, we need to, if there's, the school system, every state has to be assured that they have a way to evaluate and provide personnel development to their teachers. In Kentucky, I'm not sure if this is across the state, but this is what kills me, is that to be a special ed teacher, you can have an undergraduate in anything. They'll pull you off the street, okay, and put you in the classroom. You've never been in the classroom before. You've never even worked with kids with disabilities before, and start teaching while you take your classes. And it's okay. It's okay we have somebody off the street coming in and teach your son and daughter's classes. No, it's not. Okay, well, that's why it goes. They're emergency certified, they're on probation, and then once they have to stay in a college program. Once they finish that college program and get certified, then they can go get a teaching job or stay there. So that really kills them. So, but we need to make sure that states have to make sure there is enough special ed teachers out there. So, Private schools, students we do serve, if any private school receives federal funding, we still provide FAITH and the IEP in that private school. Okay, you can go to the next one. Let me go back to my PowerPoint. All right. Who's protected? Let me go down. Excuse me just a second. Excuse me. Again, we've already talked about this. Students who have disabilities, there's 13 disability categories. There's actually 14. An issue that a lot of you all will have, if you haven't had it yet, if your son or daughter is under 8 years old, is they want to assess your student right now. Guess what? No! Do not let them assess them until they're 8 years old. They can be labeled as developmentally delayed. Okay, that means they need supervision. They may be falling behind cognitively or physically or whatever, okay? And then at age 8, that's when we need to determine what category they need to be labeled to receive services, okay? So, or if you know other parents that have younger children, don't get them tested the first day they do screening and everything. I mean, yes, you have to get them screened to qualify for special ed, but you don't have to do the IQ test or some of the other standardized tests. Or you can make them do it over again. So, who's protected? It serves, you go to the next one, IDEA is broke up into two different categories. We have what's called Part B, which serves students 3 to 21, and then we have what's Part C, that serves 0 to 3. Students who are 0 to 3 have what's called an Individual Family Service Plan, and it really focuses on family involvement and teaching the family and everything, and then once they turn 3, that's when they start having an IEP meeting, and that's what we're going to go over. So, yeah, these are the different categories. Again, developmentally delayed. If you have a son or daughter under the age of 8, don't let them push you into getting IQ tests right now.
So can you wait till they're 8, almost 9 to get that test?
I think you should. The school can play games with me.
Amen.
All right. Okay.
Maybe you aren't fitting on.
That's okay.
Something I'm going to have to play around.
So this is the basic special ed process. What happens? Child find, or you have a son or a daughter that has been born with a disability. The school system every summer will say we're doing a screening for preschool, and so you give consent. You have to give consent, and they will screen them to see if they are eligible for special ed. Okay, if they're eligible for special ed, then this child is evaluated. Okay, and this evaluation could take several weeks, depending on who they need to have come in, depending on the disability type as well. I mean, if your son or daughter just has a physical disability and a mild intellectual disability, then we need to focus on what are those goals he needs to do to be independent in all these other classes and stuff like that. Also, once the child is evaluated, the diagnosis is then decided. Then the child is found eligible for services. Yay, we get special ed. The IEP meeting is scheduled. The IEP has to be developed within 30 days of finding them eligible for services. And so usually what happens in this period is the teacher will develop an IEP, and she'll bring it to the IEP meeting as a draft. You really need to have input on that IEP, and the coach is a great way to get that input. So make sure that you go to the IEP meeting and you understand what the purpose of the IEP meeting is. Is it for diagnosis, to do eligibility? Is it to review or revise the IEP or whatever it is? Make sure you understand that as well. So the IEP meeting is scheduled, the IEP meeting is held, and we write the IEP, which is usually already written. Okay? Sometimes we'll even send it ahead of time. So you can look at it. And I have no problem with that at all, but you need to have your input.
Well, in elementary school, the teacher always said, hey, you want to get together and we'll write a draft.
Yeah.
We did. And then when she went to middle school, her first year there, they didn't do that. And I just thought that's how it worked. Because they had done that for 7 years at elementary school. And then I got there and they're like, well, you have to request a copy, you know, and we have 24 hours to get it to you and things like that. And I didn't even know I needed to request a copy because it was already, you know, done. So, a copy of the draft. Of the draft. Yeah. Like if you want to see it beforehand, then you have to request a copy. I thought it was automatically done. So from that point on, it was well noted. And then we got new teachers, and then middle school teachers were like, yeah, we'll meet, you know. They went back to meeting with me ahead of time. But I guess I was just very fortunate. So they don't really have to meet with you to do that draft. Wow.
They're supposed to. Best practice says to do it.
Yeah.
But no, there's nothing that says you have to meet with the parent prior to the IEP meeting. No. Unfortunately, that's very much. And that's why I tried so much to stress to our students, our teachers to be, how important it is to understand families, understand what they go through. It's just like going through, if you found out someone was dying in your family, you go through all those grieving processes just like everybody else. It's a 24/7 job, not like a 6-hour job, and things go on that they will never, ever know about, you know. So it's I'm big into working with families. That's always been my big number one thing. So student is referred. You give them consent to evaluate or to see that they are eligible for services. They've been determined eligible for services. You have an IEP meeting. The IEP is developed, and then services. Once that IEP is developed, you provide services. Now, this is something I've been in several ARC meetings where we developed the IEP, and the student was going to start into more gen ed classes on this based on this IEP. And so they want to go, okay, well, we'll start tomorrow. No, you can't if you're going to get your student and they're going to be moving into more gen ed classes, you have to give the teachers time to know what's going on in that classroom so they can start adapting the information or teaching the teacher or the students what to expect, okay? So let the teachers have at least a couple of weeks before you put them in full time into a classroom, because if you don't, we're setting your son and daughter up for failure. And a lot of schools do that on purpose, so they can say, see, it didn't work out, let's go back, because they didn't plan. They didn't make the have the support thing in place before. Does that make sense? So don't let them bully you. Services is provided. Progress is measured. Several school districts have gone as a special ed teacher. Each student had their own individual data sheet that I could show the parent. Now what they do is they say, he's getting 50% on multiplications with 3-digit numbers. Okay, 50%. But what's he not getting? They can't tell me because they don't have a data sheet that says what the student is missing. I can't analyze data because teachers should be analyzing data at least once a week, find out what's going on. Graphing is awesome. We teach our students to graph. You know, when we get a graph and it goes up, down, up, down, up, down, there's a lot of variability. That's telling me there's something going on. And this is a statement from Mark Gold, who's a big developed supportive employment and the discovery policy back in the 70s, and Ann Donnelly, she's from the University of San Diego. They all have the same concept of least dangerous assumption. We cannot assume because of lack of data that student cannot do something, okay? And they also say, and I love this, and I tell my teachers all the time, when something is not working, it's not the student's fault. It is something the teacher is doing. And so I always teach them, you need to step back a minute, catch your breath, find out what's going on in the environment, because the environment really tells you what's going to happen in that classroom. I can walk into a classroom and I can say, okay, this is what's going to happen in this classroom, okay, based on the teaching style, based on how she teaches students in their students with disabilities in the classroom. Are they back in the corner with their instructional assistant? That's not inclusion. That's seclusion within. Okay? So we measure progress. As a teacher, I took data almost every day. I just did because that was the kind of teacher I was. My paraeducators were good. I had some peer tutors, so that was awesome. And so progress is measured, and then one year later, you have a review. Or you can ask for an ARC meeting at any time you want. Okay? There's a little girl bullying your daughter in PE class. I want an ARC meeting, and I want this nipped in the bud now, okay? So know that. But they usually go every year. You review them, revise them. Again, a lot of times it's the same old objectives, the same old things. She's going to stay with Miss Hall. Have a nice day. Once they're reevaluated, then every 3 years they get reevaluated. So they'll go through all those standardized tests again. But also your school psychologist will have other more informal tests as well to provide. And I can always help you on different types of assessments if you need it. So that is the basic process, how a student gets into special ed and what happens then a year, then 3 years, okay?
Meada?
Yes.
The 3 years where they're reevaluated, what, is it started at 8, 11?
They're supposed to do it, they need to start doing it the year before it's due.
Okay.
Yeah, my son's supposed to be going through that here real soon. I feel like he's been supposed to be already.
Probably may have.
I mean, because everything has just changed. Now he can't do it. And it's time he reevaluated because they're trying to prove that he stays as well as they are.
It doesn't matter what their label is. It doesn't matter on honor assessment. They have the right to be in gen ed classes. That's the bottom line. School districts will fight it, make your life miserable. We go on. Unfortunately, that's how, I'm very truthful. I'm very truthful.
And when you talk about those reevaluations, that's another thing too, that, again, in middle school, the psychologist came in and said, here's my report, I'm going on to my next IEP. And I was like, wait a minute, I haven't seen that report, are we not going to go over it? She's like, well, I mean, you can read it, I don't have time to sit here, I've got another IEP to go to, so here's your report. And of course, then I said, stop, we're done. Schedule at a time that you can go over this report. I'm not a psychologist, I can't review this. And one thing that you all may have heard me say, it's really important because it's a funny story, but it scared me. So I took the report home and I'm reading it, and it says that Emily needs to be on anti-anxiety medicine. If y'all don't know Emily, she's about the most laid-back child. I mean, you know. And so when we got back and we rescheduled the IEP, and this psychologist was not happy with me because I was taking her time, but okay. And I said, why do you think she needs to be on anti-anxiety medicine? And she looked at me, she goes, have you not seen her tick? And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm the worst mother ever. Oh my gosh, what have I missed, you know? And she said, well, and for those of you who can't see me, she flaps her arms and twists her head like that. And I was like, oh my gosh, she's doing the hummingbird on Pocahontas. She has totally blown you off. She's not listening to words you say. She's doing a movie in her head. But because of that, that one instance, she was recommending medication for my daughter. Because Emily was bored with the test that she was doing, and she just turned her off and went on. So just kind of a way to say, don't let them come in and just drop that report and walk out, because, and their justification is, well, I am one person and I've got 40 people on my caseload. I'm sorry for you, but that's not my problem.
Nope.
So I stopped the art and said, you're going to have to come back when you can explain this to me.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because you can stop the ARC, the IEP meeting, at any time. If you get into your IEP meeting and it starts getting adversarial, say, hey, we're stopping. I'm going to go talk to my advocates and my people, and then we're going to reconvene. Don't let them push you and make it worse. I mean, it's not going to get better.
And that's what they say. Well, we have everyone's schedule. We have all the subs in the classroom. So, sorry.
Sorry. Also, in the evaluation, you want to know how long is it going to take to evaluate your son and daughter. But once they start the evaluation, is your son and daughter going to sit there for 3 hours and do testing? We don't want that. Okay, we can't
start doing movies in their heads.
They start doing movies in their heads. I know of an incident where a daughter had been reevaluated, and she spent the whole day pretty much in testing. No.
How do you, is it, and this may be a silly question, but how do you know when they're going to evaluate? Because I never know when they're evaluating, Tori. I have no idea.
Ask them. Go, I want to make sure that in the ARC meeting, and put it in your summary of performance, I want to know what the time is going to be that you're going to administer that test to my son or to Tori.
And I asked for 24-hour notice.
24-hour notice, yeah, you can ask for that. You can also ask if necessary, let's say that, Emily takes medicine after lunch and it makes her completely sleepy.
Yeah.
Don't test her then. And some schools districts actually do that, okay? Yeah. So you talk about in the ARC meeting when they say, okay, we're getting ready to do the re-eval, I want to know how long each test is going to take. Are you going to break it up in 30-minute segments? Then that's what you think your son and daughter needs, then you tell them that.
And sorry. Go ahead.
Ladies first.
Can you request the setting? Because, for example,
Yes.
the last test that Tori did was in the middle of the library. Are you kidding? She's like, whatever, I'd rather, watch the kids that are walking by the window that are heading to sit inside. And so she bombed, she bombed.
I was gonna ask, we were just on this couple earlier, like my son, he's only 3 and he's just starting preschool and stuff like that. So where I guess our house is, the school district, he is to go in the afternoon. So he starts school at 11:30 to 2:30. And by the time he's ready to go to school, he is about done because he's been up since 6:30. So he doesn't sleep any later. So I was wondering, could you ask to switch to the morning shift?
Yeah, did they have a morning shift?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I'd get information from the teachers where he's crashing in the afternoon. I hate to say this, but you have to keep data on everything. You have to be organized and know all the forms and requests. I would do it in verbally and in the email, okay, and make sure you don't have to call an ARC meeting, that they're going to be not do it. You may want to call an ARC meeting, but you really don't have to do that.
And you may want to get a note from a doctor.
Yeah, a doctor. That would work too.
That says, due to stamina or whatever, that needs to attend morning school.
Because the biggest issue he always has, at the end of the day, he gets a little, hair pull or he'll hit or something like that. So I think if he went to school earlier and by that time, lunchtime's around, he'll eat and he'll be able to take a nap, and I think it'll be a lot better for
It'll be better
for empathy.
Yeah, because then before you know it, he'll be with behavioral disorders.
Yeah.
Yes, he will.
And it's because
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, you can ask for the moon. I can't remember which case court it was, but I used to teach special ed law with Ed Dove. Everybody knows Ed Dove. I love Ed Dove. And there's this law that states that school districts you may ask for a Cadillac, but you're only going to get a Chevette. Okay, that's the law. I can't remember which law it is, but.
Can I ask one more question? I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're fine.
But I'm thinking about it. And when we had the last IEP meeting, ARC meeting, they presented those scores, and we talked about doing a reeval outside of the school. Can you kind of talk about that for just a second, how that works, just so you have the right to do that?
You do have a right. If you do not agree with the evaluation information that your school has provided, you can go outside and have an independent evaluation. They are supposed to consider it when they're making their decisions and developing the IEP. Is there anything else? What else did you need to know?
I'm just curious how you go about. Is there a company that does it, like a private firm? Is it through? As a parent, how would I know where to go for that?
Other parents.
Other than Meada Hall.
Other parents. Yeah.
Well, okay, there's 2 things. I found out because the flyer came home that they offered music therapy at school because someone sent home a flyer advertising that she did piano lessons too. And I was like, oh, there's music therapy? And I asked for it, and they said, no, it doesn't. So I'm paying out of pocket now for her to get music therapy outside of.
No, we need to have an ARC meeting and get that.
And then, well, it would take away time from his day, and actually, we went to the first music therapy meeting, he liked it, I thought, that's pretty cool, which is pretty much adult education, and he's 11. He's also due for his reevaluation right now, and, his gen ed teacher thinks he's doing great, his special ed teacher, they do the same thing, same worksheets and everything all the time, for the last 3 years, so, she just has the same thing to say all the time, not a whole lot. So I didn't know what to do. I went to Horn and Richardson, and they have a psychologist there. And I said, because at our last meeting, I said, I really feel like he could do a whole lot more. You guys are supposed to get trained on all the cognitive tutoring and come things with a cognitive approach, and you never did it. You switched schools because you guys were supposed to do this. You didn't do it. And you're just doing the same old that you've always done. And I really feel like he could do so much more. And the gen ed teacher said, yes, he can. She goes, he's clicking.
Yeah.
but he doesn't speak. And she goes, I know he's got a lot going on, and she goes, he will whisper it in an adult ear, but he's afraid to say it in ear. It's a social anxiety, that's his problem. So I'm paying Florence Richardson for an evaluation with a psychologist. She's considering testing for ADD, but it's more of a social thing. He's just afraid to be saying, he's afraid to be wrong in front of kids, typical kids his age.
Yeah.
And so that's one resource.
So let's put him
But I
back in
don't
a
know.
self-contained classroom. We won't learn those skills.
Yeah, so he goes to special ed, and he works with a student teacher all the time, you know, and they just do the same worksheet.
I noticed that with another parent. Her daughter was coming home with, I helped her with homework one day, and I realized that she was coming home with the exact same math.
Same week.
And then she was also giving spelling words that had no meaning, no relationship to any kind of unit they were working on or anything they were working, no nonsense words just for spelling. I go, so you need to check their homework and adaptive work, unfortunately. You almost have to, you're not only the parent that does everything 24/7, you also have to be a teacher, unfortunately. I can teach you all strategies, how to do things, anything you need. So.
And the other thing to know at your ARC is you can invite whoever you want.
Mm-hmm.
So you can invite the special ed director
Yes.
of the county. And not that I have wonderful teachers. Only 1 year did I really have a blip on the screen until we got to high school. So, some schools are great, so I don't want everyone to think that, oh gosh, this is going to be terrible. It's not. But if you are having a problem, when those invitations go out, you can tell your facilitator, I would like the special ed director there. If she can't be there, then I don't want to meet. We need to, schedule a time. I want her there. I want the principal of the school there. And so we need to make sure that all those people will attend. Because you invite them doesn't mean that they'll attend. And then again, you can stop your ARC and say, I'm going to stop this because I asked that the special ed director be here.
And it's amazing when you bring somebody who's actually an advocate for your family. People sit up a lot straighter. And
I just read research yesterday on that.
Amazing.
We had one that Dean threatened to close the ARC because she was trying to tell them that they couldn't do certain things.
Quit arguing with me. You just want to
Yeah.
end this meeting right now.
We're like, let's do this meeting right now. See you
I
later.
was told the facilitator stormed out of our meeting and said, that's it, he gets no service, and walked out.
Oh, see, it's called on your smartphones. It's called a recorder.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, you need to start recording what these people are saying.
But you know what happened? She came back in, and everybody was.
Oh, that was totally inappropriate.
And it was sitting there going, oh, I said, what does this mean? They said, that means starting tomorrow, he can't go to speech.
No, they cannot deny him services at all.
And I said, well, that's not. And I didn't get mad, but she came back in and sat down, and I said, okay, let me tell you how this is going to happen now. I said, Dr. Frohoff and the principal are coming to our meeting, and we're going to start from the cognitive level, and you all are going to get trained. And Dr. Frohoff, I had been emailing her, and she was all on board with what I was emailing her. She said, well, this is the way they do education in the rest of the world. Why doesn't the United States do it? She goes, you're on to something. So she came in, and she went, I agree. And we started, and then before long, Dr. Frohoff was sending people away going, you know what, facilitator, you don't need to be here, I'll facilitate. And so she started facilitating. She asked the principal to come in. The teacher that we were having so many problems with sat there like this the whole time. She goes, what do you do with him? Nothing. He has nothing. And for some reason, there was...
Let's all just scream really loud right now.
And how is she still teaching? I know, it's amazing. But that year, I didn't even know we had a case manager. For some reason, when you start school in special ed, no one tells. At our school, nobody told me we had a case manager. Nobody told me that there was protocol. I had no idea. And I've asked them questions, and nobody's helpful. Even the principal's like, So, in our meeting, we had just changed that year to a different case manager, made a world of difference. She was learning, she was excited about all he could do, but she said, you know what, I don't have time to work with him the way he needs to be worked with because I'm getting all of these other teachers load too. I'm teaching all her kids and my kids, and I don't have time to sit down, but he needs more dedication. some reason, I don't understand why, but nothing happened to the teacher. And we got moved to another school where they would have more time, so he got lowered, so they had more time, and what happened, his expectations have gone down.
Okay, if you don't have high expectations. And sometimes special ed teachers are the worst person in the world.
Yeah, and
That drives me nuts when they don't have high expectations. Like, why are you working here? Go work at Walmart.
I haven't fussed, but we've been there for 3 years. I've already got a label, they're not, obviously they're not going to do anything.
I have a label across the state, too. Starts with a B.
Beautiful.
Beautiful, bright.
Maybe.
Yeah.
So, and that's true. Unfortunately, it's called keeping data, recording. It's just amazing. The things I've seen across the state has been unbelievable. How and it kills me because your son and daughters are very fortunate because they have someone that knows how to advocate and knows what to do. I have all these other parents that have no clue about special ed. They just send their son and daughter and hope they're safe and they learn, and they don't get anything because the parents no one asking for anything for that student. So that's the part. Those are the parents I really want to try to catch and maybe work something out.
Yeah, and going back to your main point, never go to an ARC by yourself.
No.
Never, ever, because you're too into, it doesn't have to, I'll go with you or whoever if I can, but even if it's just a neighbor, not necessarily someone who knows about IEPs, but just someone to take notes.
Mm-hmm.
And just having someone there really does puts everybody on their best behavior.
And it's emotional. An ARC is emotional.
It is very emotional.
So if you're focused on your child, someone else can focus on the data.
And what did they say, and what, and are you hearing what I'm hearing, or and it really doesn't have to be confrontational. I only had 2 ARCs that were very confrontational. Most of mine went really well. But again, it depends on the school, it depends on the administration, because I've heard horror stories too, and I just blocked out. Really. So.
Well, we got switched to a different school, and they're much nicer, and they're much more interested in Joshua, but I think I've kind of given up because I've worked so hard to get.
Can't give up. It's got a long way to go.
And it just didn't do any good. We just got pushed aside. So I think I want you in my next meeting.
If I had time, I do have a full-time job and a part-time job. But seriously, I will come to an ARC meeting with you if I have the time. I can't promise you. I'll review your IEP for you, or answer. You can always. You can have email and texting are the best way. When my phone rings, it freaks me out. What is that ringing noise? I hear it again. Oh, it's the phone. Answer it. Okay, so IEP. Now we're back to the IEP. We kind of know the process of getting special ed. We know some components like zero reject, procedural safeguards are put in place, and now it's time to develop that dirty piece of paper that so many people are just spit on. Drives me nuts. It's not far drive, trust me. So, the individual education plan, it pretty much describes, I'll go over the parts of it, but it is basically looking at specially designed instruction, what goals and objectives students need to be working on for the school year. The first thing we talk about is the present level of performance across different areas. So, the IEP is ready to go. It is revised or reviewed every year, and it can be revised at any time. You can go on. Let's see. Oh, okay. The big thing about the IEP and the coach, when this coach assessment you do a parent interview, and the rest of it is how are we going to get that student's goals taught in the gen ed classroom. What kind of adaptations and stuff like that. So,
do you request a coach assessment?
You can.
From the teachers, or?
Fayette County knows how to do. I used to teach with Karen at EKU, and she lives across the field from me. So. You have to say, I've heard of this assessment called the Coach. It's really a great IEP development tool. I think it will be beneficial for our students to do it. And you can always equal cycle day, or I don't know. The FMD teachers, some of moderate and severe, have usually are trained in it sometimes, in their college program. That's another thing. Even though we have standards, just like students have standards in the education world, public education, colleges have standards they have to meet for teacher education programs. So they may be teaching the standard, but they may not be teaching all the same information. So every college program is different. So that's why you get so many different. I always ask, which was college? Oh, that's why. So.
We just got a comment from our folks on webinar that they can hear Meada, but some of the comments, so we'll just try to speak up.
But basically, the IEP does support access to the general education curriculum because everybody in that school is required to learn the gen ed curriculum. Students who are on alternate assessment may have an alternative standards that they work on. They don't work on every standard, but they are still supposed to get contact of the gen ed curriculum in their school day at some point. And it does not happen in self-contained, what did in my classroom because I was a spring teacher. But, you know, you need to talk about that. We also look at ways that students not only meeting their goals, but are they progressing? Assistive technology helps so much to help students progress. Teachers would just quit being afraid of using it.
Well, and there's a big study out right now. Dr. Jane Kleiner has a project that I just heard about, is that more kids are getting augmentative assistive communication. Am I saying that right? I never said that right. So they're getting communication devices, but nobody's being trained on how to use them.
Yeah.
So, and that's just a word of caution, because we experienced that with Emily. We requested communication assistance, and so they gave her Prolo to Go, which is you can hit icons and it speaks for you and things like that. Well, really, she didn't need that. She was speaking okay. It was just unclear. Mm-hmm. So they went way overboard and bought this. At the time, it was like $300, but we never could get trained on it. And we didn't know how to use it. I mean, they have whole classes on how to use this program. Teachers didn't know how to use it. So the IT guy was like, well, I did my job. I got that. And then it was like, well, and it really, we didn't use it because it was more than she needed. It was going to take the place of her speech. We didn't need something that drastic. So just, to go along with technology is great, but,
sometimes you don't need it.
There seems to be a disparity between, I can get to the technology, but is anybody trained to use it? So.
As a teacher, I had that same problem. I had a student, nonverbal, and cerebral palsy, had a switch on her wheelchair that she would hit with a light talker. But it took so long for that light to get to where she wanted to hit it to say something. The peer tutors hated it. So when you are doing assistive technology, it's not necessarily the most expensive that works. It's usually stuff that the teachers can be very creative and develop their own technology. But there is the Bluegrass Technology Center here that will lend out programs and devices for you to try before you purchase them. A lot of the communications like the Dynavox, it's a laptop, but again, it's the programming and my parents didn't know how to do it. I forgot. The speech language was like, oh, I can't remember how to do this either. And so, again, you didn't have no communication. And when I go into a classroom or when I start teaching, the number one thing I say to my students are, the first thing you need to do is make sure your student has a way to communicate. If that student does not have a way to communicate, then you're going to stop everything else you're doing, and you're going to concentrate on how do I make sure everybody understands them and he understands us. I am going to work on communication. And communication, when I walk into the classroom and we're doing a group activity or whatever, or we're in an inclusive classroom, and I go, well, where's this communication system? Oh, it's on the desk in the classroom. Communication goes all day long, everywhere. If they're going out on community-based instruction, the communication device goes, okay? Communication is huge. If you do have issues, you have a son or a daughter, or have a friend that has a son or daughter that has communication issues, let us know, because Jane Kleiner and Jackie Farmer-Kearns and Luann Land, they have a communication grant where they're going into schools, identifying students that do not have communication systems, developing a team at that school, providing the training and following up with them to make sure they understand everything. So, that might be a possibility. I think, so let us know. There's a lot of stuff. The HDI website, if you have never been to it, it has a lot of cool stuff on it as well. I always make sure my teachers.
HDI or HTI?
HD is hdi.uky.edu.
Human Development
Institute. That's my full-time job. Okay, so the IEP also, the IEP is a plan that says, hey, we the school, this is what we're going to do to help your son and daughter go from birth to graduation. Our goal is that students to be as independent as possible and be productive and contributing members of their community. That's everybody's goal, okay? So that's what that plan does. It grows with the student, or it should grow with the student. If you're working on the same objectives over and over again, then I would probably say, what's the teaching strategy they're using, and how are they teaching it? Because more than likely, if they're not meeting their IEP goals, I would bet my salary is because the teacher is not teaching it in a way the student understands. I've made mistakes as teachers, trust me. Oh, my God. I'll be honest. I left a student at Asbury College one day. We were on the bus going back to high school.
Before you got back, right?
Yeah, so we were on the way, and I go, something is weird. There's something not right on this bus. And then all of a sudden, we got to the fork where you go into Wilmore. I go, oh, my God, we forgot Freddie. Freddie has autism. And we went back, and he was standing there with a bunch of college students that he had met. And I go, I made stupid instructional mistakes, too. I had a student, I was trying to get him to hold his head up for instruction and to talk to people, and he just wasn't doing it in the classroom. And then I had some visitors come out. He was in the hallway, and boy, she goes, I really like how he's holding his head up. He's doing a great job. I go, where? And the only reason he was holding his head up is because pretty girls. So I found pretty peer tutors to work with her. So the IEP team, again, you can ask for any IEP meeting if there's a lack of progress, something has changed in the family, there's a new technology out there you want to explore. You know, you can call an anything that would benefit your son and daughter to be as independent as possible, meet their goals, and progress in the gen ed curriculum. That's the bottom line. Ooh, that's every day. So, when we are talking about the IEP, the ARC needs to take into consideration the strengths of the student, concerns of the parents, because IDEA really wants the school to focus on parent active participation and involvement, not just going to the IEP meeting, but actually participating in the IEP and making decisions. We also want to make sure that the results of any evaluation, that someone can make sure they can explain those to us. Maybe we can find some informal ones. We want to make sure that not only the academic part of learning is talked about in the IEP, but also those functional skills. A lot of times the FMD class gets charged as a life skills classroom. But no, they can also be getting general education curriculum as well. So it's kind of a balancing act. So that's what we need to take in consideration. So I'm going to go, and one way they want you to, there's a document. When you go to the IEP guidance document, that a lot of this information I have is coming from the school districts, the co-ops. What happens in Kentucky, in Kentucky we have what's called education co-ops across the state. There's non-education co-ops, and within each education co-op, there's a special ed co-op, and they have people who are, you know, expert working with students with moderate and severe disability. They may have a person that's AT, I don't consider them expert, has information about AT, reading, and they provide trainings to their school districts and a lot of times to the parents as well, and it's usually free. So here in Kentucky, it's called the Central Kentucky Special Ed Cooperative. Marty Genter, is the director, and they have a transition person. They have early childhood people that work with. You can set up a meeting and go talk to them, or they can come out and talk to you, or look, if you're having problems with your son and daughter in one of these schools in Fayette County, you know, maybe they can help. They can go and help with the teacher meet those needs that they need to educate your son and daughter. Does that make sense? Sally Miracle is their low incidence consultant. She used to be my student teacher.
What's the name of that?
Sally Miracle. Marty Genter is the director of the Central Kentucky Co-op, and Sally Miracle is the low incident consultant there.
Is the special education one located inside the Central Kentucky Education?
Yes, they're located in the Central Kentucky
The
Co-op.
one in Lexington?
The one in Lexington.
Okay. It's unfortunate.
You can just Google Kentucky Special Ed Co-ops, and it'll bring up all the co-ops across the state and their websites, and sometimes you can go on their websites and get resources too. And if you can't get it, let me know, and I'll yell at them and say, hey, what's going on? So before we get into development of the IEP, I'm going to talk about the requirements. This is a document that the co-ops develop and revise every year. It's 72 pages. It will tell you anything and everything you want to know about IEPs and what you should ask. What I have done is I've taken a blank IEP and I have plugged in all the information and examples of questions you want to ask for each section, okay? So that this is, I would download it. Kentucky Department of Education, you can put IEP guidance document. Tracy's going to have it available for you.
I think I've got one in my office.
Yeah, my printer kind of ran out last night, so this morning, whatever. There's also another document that co-ops developed. It's called the IEP Lesson Plan document. That one, yeah. Can you scroll down a little bit? It has, when you don't know what kind of supplementary aids or you don't know what kind of strategies that your son or daughter might need, this will go through a table of keep going down. Go on. Go on. Go. Okay, yeah, this is fine. It will tell you, go back one more, sorry. See, it says review of fluency and generalization. It will state all the different types of strategies that teachers can use to teach that skill, okay? And then it has what supplementary aids and services for reading and writing and math and functional skills, okay? It's called the IEP Lesson Plan Handbook. Those are two documents that get revised every year that you need.
What was the first one again? Sorry.
The 2015 IEP guidance document.
And that's under Kentucky Department of Education.
And then we'll have it for you at DSAC as well. So those are tools for you. Download them. Don't print them out.
Are we going to put this on our website? We can.
Yep. We'll make sure it's there, along with the acronyms and the coach interview and an introduction to coach.
Intro to coach.
I like that continuum that you have too. That could be
You'll have the PowerPoint. My PowerPoint kind of but it's like, I don't want to do PowerPoint. What's the best way to do this? Deliver this information. So one of the things that teachers need to do when they're developing an IEP is they actually, when they start developing annual goals, they go to the Gen Ed curriculum and to the Kentucky core assessment standards, okay? And they pull annual goals that relate to what that student's needs are, okay? And then they develop annual goal, then they develop benchmarks or short-term objectives to meet that annual goal, okay? So that's a Kentucky core academic standards. You want to hear about that? That's also, those are the standards everybody's learning. There's also the alternate assessment website. You can go to HDI and it'll take you to it. And it will tell you everything. There's a great little thing about alternate assessment handbook for parents somewhere. If you can't find it, I can find it. I have so many resources.
That's the problem. There's lots of resources, but if you don't know they're out there, how do you know to ask for it? I didn't know about the alternate assessment.
Yeah.
Well, they did give me one. I mean, they gave me one at my meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like,
But I think I have a good system. I mean, I like where I am.
Good. Then when we develop the IEP, we need to use data that's been collected over time, okay? If we don't have any data, then we really don't know what to do. And so they'll be screened to make sure they're eligible, so we'll have that information. If they're in any kind of birth to 3-year-old program, they will have an individual family service plan that has goals and objectives that they should be working on that will carry over when they turn 3, okay? So Students birth to 3, Part C, 3 to 21 is Part B. And so we'll use, they call it performance data for the IEP development, and that is any kind of survey or any kind of worksheet we develop, any kind of data sheet that we have that we're collecting data on their objectives, any other, I did taught more than just the objectives in my classroom, so we have data for that. But that's what the basis of our information and going into an IEP comes from. It's based on previous information that we've learned about the student. It could be the behavior checklist that I need to look at. Okay, so you can go on and do the next. That's the required components. I'm just going to go over these, and then I'm going to get the IEP up. Okay, because we're going to go over each one of these. In the IEP, the first thing we have is called the present level of academic and functional performance. In other words, we look at the strengths and the weaknesses and how does this adversely affect the student in progressing the gen ed. Then we talk about, there's some considerations, special factors we'll talk about. We have, based on those present levels, we will develop IEP annual goals. And based on those annual goals, we'll develop either short-term objectives or benchmarks for that student to learn that goal. And then we are going to make sure that there's a method of measurement. How is this teacher going to measure whether the student has reached criteria on their goals? We're going to talk about reporting progress. Anytime any student without a disability gets a progress report, students with disabilities have to get a progress report. Specially designed instruction, we'll talk about a lot of that, and that's the IEP handbook, lesson plan handbook, has a lot of that information in it. What are supplementary aids and services? Accommodations, those are two different things, believe it or not. Program modifications for support of development, personnel development. Participation in gen ed and least restrictive environment. Transition, you may not be ready for transition right now, but AARP, because I'm at that age now, does a study every few years, and guess where Kentucky ranks in providing services for their senior citizens and services for adults with disabilities?
50th.
You're right! Woo! We're 50.
You can save us?
No, usually Arkansas or West Virginia saves our butt. I have been in this field for 30 years, and I've kept up with that. We have never been above 45. So you may have young children. There is nothing out there after they graduate. So we start talking transition day one.
Number 1.
Where do we need to go?
Probably Kansas or Minnesota or Massachusetts, California sometimes, yeah.
That's why when you hear us talk about the We Work program now, you think, oh, that's so far off. You got to start thinking, because unfortunately, a lot of high school, I don't mean to dog teachers, I really don't. There's
some great teachers out there.
Teachers, but a lot of high school teachers do not expect your child to ever have a job.
Right, and that's what they told me, and they told me I'm so naive.
And that's why we're doing the We Work program. It's almost a supplement to say, well, yeah, they will have a job, because look, we're working with the Down Syndrome Association, and he's already got a part-time job, so booyah. And
another thing is that you all need to realize is when you go vote for your politicians and stuff, you need to know what their concerns and what they want to do for students that have special education, because we got the wonderful alternate diploma, the word, but we don't have anything backing it up. So it's just a sheet of paper. They didn't do anything. They just changed the name. Okay. Go to the last 3 slides of the PowerPoint, because before I get started with the IEP and go over it, civil rights law that affect education. Because I have been talking to a lot of parents, mention that. Oops. When school citrus say, oh, you're talking to Meada Hall. Okay, it's special ed director. Don't worry. Every time I go to an IEP meeting, special ed director is there. I love it. I actually offer them help. There are 2 civil rights laws that benefit your son and daughter. And what you all need to start doing now, you can either file due process with the IEP, okay? They could be not providing a free appropriate public education or any of that stuff. And the school may get dinged, they may not get dinged, usually nothing happens. But a civil rights lawsuit is huge, okay? There's been this thing going around Kentucky the past couple of years where students who have supplementary aids, services, and accommodations, they have to ask for them before they get them. Pull up accommodations thing. And I have, for the last several years, have been fighting, screaming, actually, at some special ed directors, because the thing about modifications is, first of all, our students need to know they have modifications. A lot of our students don't even know that. A lot of our students don't even know how to use those modifications, because it's the teacher's job to say, these are your accommodations. This is how you use them. Do you need to use any today? It's not that, oh, I know she's nonverbal, but she didn't ask me for her accommodation, so she can't use it. Oh, no. Don't tell me that happens, because, we'll be there. So, 2 civil rights laws. First one is Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, and the other one is Americans with Disabilities Act. When they do not provide a free, appropriate public education, least restrictive environment, they are denying your son and daughter their civil rights. So if you're not getting anywhere going down the ideal path, invite a person from the Human Resource Center. I can't remember. It's a civil rights. There's an office here in Lexington. You can go Kentucky Civil Rights, and it'll take you to it. Okay, I feel that my son and daughter is being discriminated against at school, and I would like to have someone from the Civil Rights Office go with the IEP with me.
But they pay attention to that, don't they?
Yeah. So if you go to the one that says accommodation.
I lost my numbers on that.
Oh, it's not on the PowerPoint. It's a different document.
No wonder I can't find it.
It's a document that says accommodation. And so I have been preaching this the past 3 years, and I think it finally paid off, because we just got this email this spring. And Tracy can find it. I gotta go.
Here we go. All right. Now what am I looking for?
The accommodation.
Accommodation. Okay.
This is from the Commissioner of Kentucky Department of Education. Please practice a student-initiated accommodations immediately. You are to Kentucky Department of Education directing districts and schools to immediately cease the practice of requiring that accommodations be student-initiated. Okay? Civil rights laws, people, think about it. When you're not getting your way, play that card, because the school system's going to play every card in the world not to do what's best for your son and daughter. So
they told us, well, he's in middle now, but when he was in elementary, they had him in gym and art for his regular classes, and we said, well, why can't he, go in science, or I know he can't do the math, or the English or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, can't he take what he's working on in the S&D class into there and have the aide go with him? And they said, well, the aide's not a qualified math teacher or English teacher, so she can't. I said, well, she's still working on whatever he's working on in the other class, so what's the difference? And they just constantly
they're saying that
arguing with us about it.
What they're arguing is that paraeducators cannot be providing content instruction, but they can be helping with drill and practice, pre-assessment of the information, and so it's basically how it's written or said, maybe, or talked about. But yeah, they can do whatever they're doing in that special ed classroom. We can adapt it for that gen ed classroom. Okay.
So they said, well, he don't want to go in there.
Civil rights law.
He'll keep running back to the class. We just let him go on back.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. And no, that's called a little behavior plan. Easy done. Stay here so many minutes, and then eventually stay here the whole period. Gradually make them stay in class. But yeah, that's true. But yeah, that's the big thing. Paraeducators cannot be the sole provider of delivering core content information. That's why they're saying that. But they can go in and assist the student in working on their assignments and everything in core content. I tell you what, schools can interpret this law so many ways, and it's like we have a board member, Tanya. I went to an ARC meeting with her, and we were screaming in this meeting how bad it got. And finally, her husband goes, okay, we're out of here. And I go, don't worry, I have a better school for her to go to. And I got her another school district.
Are we allowed to, as parents, to go in and shadow the classroom?
Schools do not want parents in the school system.
They'll scream SBDM.
Yes. You have to go through,
Site-based decision-making.
yeah, you have to go through your site base, see if that's happening.
Because I keep requesting it and they won't respond.
And if you have someone who's doing an independent evaluation, they have to have access to go in and observe. Are they keeping them from doing it? Are they not?
I don't know anything. I just know at our art meetings, I get the pat on the head. You know, your son's fine. I don't know where.
Yes, he is.
And he's very
I'm with you, right there. That
Yeah,
was
but then it's like, we have nice
I'm gonna go meet
and
them
at the end,
today.
I go, but I feel like there's so much more than I need to come to grips with this, you have child development. No, you do not.
No, you do not.
No, you do not.
Yeah.
They need to come to grips with
say that.
expectations and possibilities. I
We-
can't
so
believe
that-
that's
we
why
pulled the
I
IEP
can't
up.
believe they say that.
The IEP example.
So what's the alternative? If I can't go see how he's doing in the classroom, because I'm not getting feedback, what's the alternative? Show up.
And you can't get anything from the principal,
I just want to see how
like
he's
going
doing.
above the special ed, like the
In your case, I would just talk to Karen Frohoff and try to get it arranged that way.
Yeah.
what's SBD? What is that?
School-based decision making.
Site-based
Oh, site-based.
Like that.
That's
Oh,
why-
yeah.
Okay.
They make their own policies.
I'm going to go ahead, we don't have much time. I'm going to go quick and dirty through the IEP. You have 2 documents that all this information has come from that you can look at. I just pulled out some of the things because that document is 72 pages and it's kind of overwhelming. So, first thing we do, you have the demographic information of the student and everything. And the first thing we...
How you're zoomed in on the.
Menu, picture, I fooled with all this the other day. Picture loaded. Picture silent.
Okay, while you're doing that, I'm going to go ahead and talk. ARC meeting. If the student is 14 years or you want to talk about transition, the first thing you go over in that IEP is the transition plan. Once a student turns 14 and you're working on transition, the first thing you need to go over is the transition plan. Because if we don't know if the student doesn't have a transition plan, then we don't know what kind of post-secondary goals and services they need to graduate. That make sense? So, the IEP, student turns age 14, the student should be at the IEP meeting. We have a lot of information on student-directed IEPs. They can decide who's going to be there. They can push a switch that moves the PowerPoint thing they did with the peer tutor about what they like to do at school. There's ways for our students, and they need to start as young as possible and before 14 because this is helping them with their self-determination skills, okay? So, student is at 14 or looking at transition, you start with a transition plan. It drives development of the IEP, okay? So, I'm just going to go ahead and start with the present level performance. The student is considered high school. And so, present level performance, we have different categories like communication, academic, and academic you have math, reading, and writing. You have health, vision, and motor, social and emotional, general intelligence. We have transition. We also have functional vision and learning media now. And another one we have is called functional hearing, listening, and communication. What comes the game? What is the game?
Not touching that.
You will have this available to you as well.
I'll email all this out to you.
I always wait till last minute to make my changes, I'm sorry. So the present level performance for communication, that's looking at the voice, fluency of the student. What are the receptive and expressive skills? What kind of speech or production and use, how do they use their language? So those are things that you want to talk about in the communication status. Again, that one document will provide you with all the different types of questions that you want to ask. For the next area of present levels, we have what's called academic performance. And that describes the development of achievement and how the student applies their learning. Like, Can they work one-on-one? Can they work in a group setting? What's their basic reading skills? Do they have reading comprehension? What about reading fluency? Okay, these are things that you want to look at and make sure you add in this academic performance. This present level performance drives the development of that IEP, because the present level performance are going to tell us the strengths the students can do, and then it's going to tell us what the student needs to work on and what adversely affects them in a special ed class or gen ed class, okay? So each one of these questions. Math, how well does the student demonstrate understanding of measurements and data? Just questions I can't even think of. That's why I say I'm not an expert, but this document has a lot of questions, things like, oh, I did not think of that. It's like trying to teach one of my students to do banking skills, and, oh, man, if you tried an ATM card. No. See, we all learn. Writing, how well does the student apply appropriate capitalization rules? Those are questions you can ask. The next session is health and vision and screening. Does the student take any medication? Do they have any mobility issues? Do they need orientation mobility skills? What about their vision? Is it low vision? Is it regular vision? Do they need hearing? Do they need an auditory trainer during class so they can hear what the teacher is saying? Does the student have difficulty detecting drop-offs and bumps when they're moving from activity to activity? Does the student have a health or medical condition? Does the student have a sensory-motor challenge that we need to talk about? Sensory is for everybody. You want to talk about sensory, you need to talk about sensory, because learn a lot about sensory. Social-emotional. And social-emotional, that's, how does the student, what kind of social skills? Are they shy? Do they have inappropriate social skills and interact inappropriately? They don't know how to terminate a conversation. They don't know how to initiate appropriate conversation. What about their personal skills? Can they manage all their personal skills? What kind of behaviors are the students having? Every day after lunch, if they're having a tantrum, that's telling me something's going on. So trying to figure the related behaviors. Also the sensory. So social-emotional, and then we get to the general intelligence. This is the least area I care about, because this is when they're going to bring in all those scores from your psychological. What's your IQ score? What did you get on the Stanford Binet? That's how I feel that way. And when I go into ARC meetings and they're doing that, I'll sit there and look at my kid and go. So, how well does the student mentally manipulate information? And there's questions for you to be able to ask. And then the big important one, if they're 14, we need to go over what's called transition needs. That goes over first if we're doing this. That's going the wrong way. Okay. Starting at age 14, the federal government says we start transition age 16. Thank you, Kentucky, for going above and beyond. In Kentucky, we start at age 14 or if earlier deemed appropriate. Okay. So, in the 8th grade, and as the students get ready to transition over into the freshman year, we look at what's called a multiple course of classes, course of studies, and that's considered an ILP. Have you ever heard of an individual learning plan? Every student in school has an individual learning plan. It's not very good for some of our students with more significant disabilities. We do have a paper format called the Individual Graduation Plan that some school districts are using for that population, and I could get that to you. So, at age 14, that's when we're going to concentrate that course of study. What are the classes the student needs to take to get to this post-secondary goal? Okay, it's all about post-secondary goals. And when we're looking at post-secondary goals, when I said earlier, and I want to say this as many times as I have to so you learn it, special education is not a place. It is not a place. Special education services can be implemented anywhere. So don't let them think that, oh, I can't have community-based instruction, or they can't go out to work, or they can't go do job shadowing. We put it in their IEP, they go do it. So when you're running IEP and you have a transition age student, how many of y'all have transition age or older? Nobody? Okay. We need to get together. That's my thing, is transition, working with parents, and talk about it and get some things in place, get them on some waiting lists if necessary, make sure that when the time comes, he gets referred to OVR services, Office of Vocational Rehabilitation. Most of our students qualify for the Office of Vocational Rehabilitation Services, and they provide funds to help the student either to go on to college or technical school or to go to work. Okay?
Can you do that before they're that age, or do you?
Voc rehab usually won't come in until their senior year. That's why I want to get started earlier. But if they're in the program that I have, the statewide program, the Community Work Transition Program, we start the last semester of their sophomore year.
Okay, so it's not something you can start early.
Well, they're supposed to. They're supposed to.
What they'll say is it takes away from their instructional day.
Yeah.
And
that's why that course of study is important, because a lot of times we just say, okay, course of study, these are classes they're going to take, we'll change it anyway. Well, no, if we know that student goal is to go to work, learn skills, and go to a trade school, you know, hey, we need to talk about that right now.
we have students in gen ed that co-op all the time.
Yeah, and all kids co-op. In every school district, there's co-ops for kids to go out and go to either job shadow. They may take, I took college classes when I was in high school, you know. It's for everybody. And if it's for everybody, it's also for our students with
Are
disabilities.
they not doing that as much? Are they not doing like the community-based instruction and stuff as much?
Community-based
Like,
instruction
so
It's a
focused
field
on the-
trip. I developed a community-based work transition manual, I know.
So is there other things that they can do? Like,
Oh, my God, all my students went and got an ID card, not all at the same time. Community-based instruction is taking out 2 or 3 students at a time, and you may have a pair with you or a peer, and they go work on, you know, maybe they're learning what the different aisles have. Maybe they're learning to find frozen food for dinner tonight. Maybe they're learning to budget their money. There's a really neat trick on teaching students how to budget money.
I'm afraid they're not doing that anymore. Are they doing that? In like
Because of No Child Left Behind.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's
right, and it's not happening.
The other day, and I went through the U-Scan part, and he went, oh, Mom, I can do this. And he took it, and he scanned all my stuff, and bagged it and all that, and I went, you want to pay for it? And he goes, I use money. And I said, well, here's my credit card, and so I showed him I did a credit card, I'm like, you learned that at school, how about that? You know, that was a CBI trip that taught him
See,
that.
that's great though.
Yeah, that is.
Remember, special education is a service that can be delivered anywhere. I mean, that home training program I did for 2 of my students.
That means so much, because I'm afraid that
And I'll
my
send
daughter
him-
won't be able to do those, you
I'll
know.
send him dollars and change, so I tell him, make sure he counts my money when he pays his bill, you know, and,
Yeah,
and they're teaching next dollar up.
yeah,
That's what
that's
for.
awesome.
All right, well, that's great. The big thing about students and students with disabilities, there's abundance of literature, research out there that show that students with more significant disabilities and some students with mild disabilities have difficulty generalizing the information they learn in the school setting to the community. So there's abundance, and that's why we want to do community-based instruction, because Stella, who used to be all the parent resource people quit after they started hanging out with me. We were in a meeting one day, a KDE meeting, she goes, I just don't understand. The school says he can count money and do all this stuff, but when we go in the community, when he's at home, he can't do it. It's like, ding. Teachers, what happens is there's 4 phases to learning. We acquire the skill, and then teachers work on fluency, make sure everybody can do it better and faster. And then we want to make sure the student can generalize that skill across settings. So we're going to practice that skill in different settings. If I have a student, let's say they have a job and they get to take a break, I'm going to teach them what to do during the break time, you know. And when you do that multiple course of study, that's when you need to say, if this student's going to work while he's in high school, we need to make sure his classes are in place so there is time for them to go out to work or to do an internship or to take a training class. Okay, that's the importance of the multiple steps, the multiple course of study, is yes, this is how many years he's going to be in school, and this is what we need to do to reach his goals. Okay, so at age 16, we're going to start writing what's called post-secondary annual goals and objectives. For each post-secondary goal that we have in the transition plan, there has to be an annual goal in the IEP to teach that. Okay? Leave that or not? I know, a lot of times they put goals up here, and I go back into the IEP to see where they're teaching it, and it's like, you're not teaching any of these goals. Okay? Also at age 16, we're going to start inviting other interagencies to come into the IEP, like people from Parks and Rec, Maybe they're going to live in a supported living environment, and so we may have the person from that company. Maybe they have a boss, or if they're elementary level, maybe they have their music therapist and all these people there for the ARC. But at 16, we want to invite, and the number one person that we invite is the Office of Voc Rehab. What happens is states, we have the policies and procedures, we implement FAPE, we provide the IEP, we monitor, revise until the student graduates. And once the student starts to graduate, we need to bring in those people that are going to be with that student after they graduate. Okay? When I was a teacher, and this is something we can do too, we facilitated what's called person-centered planning, which is very much like a coach. And we invited all my parents. Our school system gave us money that we had a room at one of the hotels, local hotels, and we had a room. Jackie Farmer Kearns and myself and my other teachers and paraeducators facilitated it. And so out of 14 students, we had 8 families show up with the team. One team had their attorney with them, one team had the grandpa, one team had their neighbor, but it was people that was going to be in that person's life. And we did it as a whole group, but you had your own individual person plan. And it showed, we talked about the history, what works, what doesn't work, where does the student spend their time, where do they not spend their time, who do they spend their time with, what do they want to do at the end of the day, when they wake up in the morning. How do we make that day possible, and we figure out ways to get there. And you meet on regular basis. You may meet and say, oh, Johnny's got a job, let's meet and talk about some of the accommodations we need to make sure he has, or you want to say, something's not working at the school system, let's meet and see if we can figure something out to help them, okay? It's person-centered planning, and that's coach's part of person-centered planning, okay? So, OVR, post-school out, what happens with the states is every state is responsible for providing information 1 year after a student with an IEP graduates. They do a survey, and 1 year after, somebody from the school system calls all these people, all these students who have IEPs, and they talk to that person or parent, and they ask them questions. Have you been employed? Have you gone to class? How you spend your spare time? Anyway, you can see this data, because it's showing that a lot of our students with more significant disabilities are stuck at home doing nothing after graduation, pretty much. But it's called the post-school outcome data, and it's pso.org. You can go HDI and find it that way too. But it will give you the reports every year.
It's not uplifting.
It's not uplifting at all. But it tells you, and you can also go in, and in some places you can go in and actually see your county information at one point. I'll find out if you can still do that. But that is information that has to be made public. Exactly. And no parent knows about it, do you?
No.
No. So,
and I've actually done those interviews. They're called yo-yo interviews.
Youth 1 year out. Youth 1 year out.
So they stage through 21, and you call them. You try to talk to the individual if they can talk to you. But most of it is, what do you do now that you've graduated? I'm at home. What do you do at home? Watch TV. And again, that all goes back to expectations. And sometimes, not to get off on a tangent, but sometimes, my question was, well, when's the OVR going to come start working with Emily? She's 16. Well, we can't take that time away from her instructional day till she's done with core curriculum testing.
Not if you do the multiple course of study.
Right. But, and it gets to the point, it gets to the point of, well, I don't know, I just do this myself. And so anyway, just to let you know, and then there's a correct way to do employment skills and to find that person a job. And it is not, we have 2 positions at Kroger, 2 positions at Lowe's, and 2 positions at, what's my other one? Walmart. There's nothing wrong with working there if that's where they want to work.
I have a problem.
The process is you're supposed to be asked, what is your interest? What would you like to do? If someone told me I had to be an accountant, listen, me and that company are in big, big trouble. I don't do numbers. That's not me. So anyway, when you talk about employment in your IEP and when you get there, it says 16. They should be working with them when they're 16, not
not when they're 20 and a half and they're going to exit high school in 3 months.
Yeah.
So
Not enough time.
What are they saying that it's taking away from their
Core content curriculum.
But they get pulled out for all kinds of things, and why wouldn't you?
Bingo.
So what? This is part of our core content.
It's part of our IEP.
Not going to be tested on this.
Yeah.
Seriously, I've been very fortunate. I just got back from Portland. I presented a national conference. It's called TASH, and it's a great organization, tash.org. Has some great resources and stuff. But it's happening everywhere.
And again, you'll have some very great teachers, very great school systems. I feel like, I don't want you to go around just
Transition.
encourage your students to know that what to ask for. If you don't know what to ask for,
Some colleges don't even have a class on transition. UK goes back and forth. I've taught it a few times. I took my classes, but transition, your teacher may only have one. Like I go in and do a guest speaking lecture for a couple of classes on transition. That might be all the transition your teachers may get. Okay, I'm a transition guru, but I'm not an expert. So when we have transition, there are things that we want to make sure the student works on. One of those is instruction. Teaching that student the skill they're going to use in that community. Do they need to use next dollar strategy? Do they know how to pay their bills? Do they want to keep their cable tomorrow? If so, what do you need to do? We have to start doing problem-solving strategies and scenarios with our students. Related services. I was very fortunate where I taught. It was so awesome. I had my physical therapist, went to some work settings with my students to make sure they had mobility and were able to go around the work environment okay. My PT also, we're taking classes at Asbury College, went and taught one of the rec classes and showed them how to do different kinds of alternative movements with students that have physical impairments. We also, related service, OT came in, work environment, the home environment. They all went on CBI. Depending on what that student needs, they all went on. So, and that's the way it should be. We do not believe in pull-out therapy. Because what happens with pull-out therapy, the speech language come and get Johnny, go work with a little group, when they're supposed to be working with them individually, but somehow they figured out that, I worked with him 30 minutes in this group. And I don't think you can do that. I don't think that's possible. Okay? And when you pull them out, they come back, will they generalize that information? No. So they need to be getting their related services in the environment and in the situation in which they would be using those. Okay? Also, another thing is Kentucky, when you go to vote and talk about politics, Kentucky is not an employment-first state. Of course, we're last in the state in providing employment services, probably. So when you talk to your legislators or you have friends or whatever, please try to push the state to become an employment-first. That will get more opportunities, there'll be more resources provided for us, and we'll work, and there'll be avenues to work with more businesses to understand how to hire individuals with disabilities.
Employment first means employment is the first outcome. Okay. That's the expected outcome for students. Students.
Unfortunately, some of our students get get paid sub-minimum wage. They get paid 10 cents per piece. No.
How do you get them out of the group speech at school?
When we figure that out, we'll make a lot of money. I have no answer for that. That's how bad it is.
We didn't know that until recently. We talked to the teacher, and she just happened to mention it, and we're like,
they live in another world. I'll try to think of something, but okay, instruction, community experience. Some students, they say, I want to work at Walmart or I want to work at McDonald's because they don't know what's in their community. We have to give them opportunity to go job shadowing and learn what occupations are in their community. We also want to be able to get a functional evaluation, vocational evaluation on that student. We have one through my program that's really cool, and we aligned it with the Department of Labor's Skills to Pay the Bills. It's a free document. It helps teaching students self-determination skills, which you all probably want to start with. And then we have post-school adult living objectives. The student have the objectives that we need to talk about to help them live independently. And do they need to work on daily living skills? The two students I did home training with, the biggest thing was to help them be as independent as possible so they could live semi-independently. So that's why I went into the home and we did all that training and did everything else. So those are the instructions. I'm going to go quickly. We only have 6 minutes. I can stay longer. Huh?
We can stay probably, I can push it to 12:30. I have
Okay. So you have all of these wonderful present level performance. You have your, and you talk about their strengths, what are their weaknesses, and how does it adversely affect their education, okay? And then we have what's called special factors, considerations of special factors. And one of those is the student's behavior. Seriously, a lot of behaviors that I get called about are just typical behaviors that they're doing because that's what typical students do. But for some reason, teachers, especially teachers that are scared of students that have different behaviors, will say, oh my God, we have to have a behavior plan. We have to have a behavior plan. Sometimes you don't. You need to assess the environment first before you say behavior plan. Because I can step back or I'll say, Tracy, come into my class. So-and-so is acting up and I cannot figure out why he's doing it. So she will come in, spend 20 times, she goes, oh, you know what, Meada? That peer tutor over there picks on him all the time. Ah! So get rid of that peer tutor. No more problems. Okay? But if your student does have a behavior and it impedes their education and the education of others, then yes, we need to develop a behavior plan. In order to develop a behavior plan, we have to do what's called a functional behavior assessment. And that's where the school system will have the school psychologists, the teachers. They'll ask you to fill out a survey, a social adaptive behavior scale. So they'll do all this stuff. And the main purpose of doing a functional behavior assessment is to find out the purpose of the behavior. And I've taught ABA for 30 years, so this is ingrained in my brain. If a student is having behavior problems and is impeding their education, we want to do a functional assessment. We don't want it done in just a week. It needs to be done over time because I had consultants, I had students that used to beat the crap out of me, and I've had every behavior consultant come in, and I'll be darned that day that student was good as gold.
Like your car.
Okay.
Every time.
Yeah, yes, it happens every time. So make sure you get it observed over time and not just that one time, because everybody has a good day. Everybody has a good moment. And don't let them just say, oh, we did a week. No, every week's different too. Maybe they stay with dad one night and mom another night. There's so many variables that you have to put in place to understand. And there's only real two purposes for students to have a behavior. They want to gain something. They want to gain your attention. They want to gain approval. They want to gain money. They want to gain being the tough guy on the playground. Or they want to avoid something. They want to avoid academic tasks. They want to avoid social skills. Okay? And sometimes it is a sensory issue that they just need to do the behavior because it's helping them regulate their senses. Okay? But there's two purposes, to avoid or to gain. Okay?
Can this evaluation be done on the bus? Or is it just
No! Wherever the behavior is occurring and not occurring is where you need to do it. So because when I do an observation, I want to go in places also where the behavior is not occurring because I want to find out what's working. Why isn't it? Is it because there are certain students? Is it because the teacher doesn't know how to teach? Maybe there's no reinforcement for the student. They don't want to do the task. So, yeah, anywhere the behavior is happening and not happening, we need to assess. But they will go only in places where the behavior is happening, or they'll just pick a setting. Oh, we're going to go in here and watch them today, and it's not even where the behavior occurs. Well, they don't have a behavior problem. So you did the functional assessment. You developed the behavior plan based on the purpose of that. And when we develop the behavior plan, this is a big issue. A lot of times what schools do when they develop a behavior plan, they do reactive. If the student does this, this is what's going to happen. That is not a behavior plan. IDEA says that we have to use what's called positive behavior supports and interventions. In other words, we need to figure out, for instance, I had a student, every time she got in a fight with her mom and brothers and sisters when first she got on the bus, we were going to have a really bad day. So what would happen was the school bus, I had it ready on my room. She said, Meada, it's going to be a great day. I'll talk to you later. Or, Meada, your package is here, and I think you need to come get it. And that means I had to go run to the bus real fast. Really fast.
The eagle has landed.
The eagle, yeah. You would believe some of the things they would say. I guess that squirrel needs to get taken off. That was when I go, what squirrel? They go, Meada, stand it. Oh. I'm a squirrel. We didn't want the students to, get, And so I would run down, and we did a self-monitoring sheet. And, of course, the first 2 weeks, she threw it at me. She spit on it, threw it at me. The things she could do with that piece of paper was amazing. But you know what? I said, that's fine, because guess what we're going to do? I'm going to teach you how to Xerox these. Let's go. And so after a while, she realized that, I tear these up, I'm just going to have to make more. She learned a skill, a new skill, too. So, but we went in, and I told her what her expectations were for the day and told her what we were going to do. I made it very, very positive. When I knew, because I knew that she had a fight, what I would do was go first thing, I go, I'm so sorry you're going to argue with your son. And I'll let her talk about it for just a couple of minutes. I go, well, you know what? Let's forget about that. We're going to have a great day today. This is what we're going to do today. And when you do this, this is what's going to happen. Okay? Positive, setting up positive supports before the behavior occurs. If teachers start doing that, we would have less behavior problems. Okay? So, I'm a behavioral person, too. Well, I've been in field for 30 years. I know a little bit of everything. So, behavior. If it impedes, if it's just something that aggravating the teacher, and I've had special ed teachers go, when students sitting there doing this, kick their kid out of the classroom. They'd always send them to my classroom, and I'd always put them to work. No one came to my classroom and did nothing. So, is the student visually or blind? Are they impaired? Will they need instruction in Braille? Do we have a machine in the school district that does Braille? Do they know how to read Braille? Okay, that's a big issue. Do they have communication needs? Again, if they do not have a formal way to tell someone what they need and what they want, they need a communication system. And we need to start as early as possible. And we don't want to take away the possibility of them having speech and being verbal. We would pair those together and eventually get rid of the communication, and hopefully they can learn the speech better. Is the student deaf or hard of hearing? A lot of kids wear hearing aids, and what I've learned as a teacher is they don't wear the batteries in their hearing aids. They don't turn them on. It could be as easy as a teacher wearing what's called an auditory trainer. It's a mic that she has, a little FM receiver. The student has headphones in somewhere in the classroom, and she talks to the mic, and he can hear everything. Okay, so there's things out there.
Sometimes they won't wear their hearing aids.
Now, this is one of my biggest pet peeves with school districts, assistive technology. There's so much technology out there. Think about, maybe they're in a biology class, and we need what's the things you look in to see all the specimens? Microscope. I knew it was something micro. We need a microscope that puts the information up on the board so she can see it. There's such microscopes like that. Your regular ed teachers are the people that will help you here. And if they're not part of your IEP meeting, then you don't know what to ask for. Teachers are the worst. They don't want you to ask for anything because they're afraid they're going to get in trouble with the school. So they go to the parent. Can you bring this up? I had a lot of IEP meetings before the IEP. Let's bring this up. We want this. Means they won't do that. Oh, yes, they will. So there we go. Assistive technology. There's software programs. Don't always say no to this. Say, yeah. There's a lot of software program out there for reading. There's drill practice software programs. There's instructional programs. So basically what we need to do is make sure they don't say no. Because they'll go, well, if you say yes, we have to do it.
We have to do it for every student.
Yeah, with that, and then we would have to provide AT. Yeah, you think so? Okay, the next part of your IEP is the manageable goals. Usually the manageable goal is a core content standard that relates to what the student is trying to do, okay? There might be reading. For functional skills, we use what's called the practical living academic standards. They have a lot of those functional skills in that. That's where we would pull from. So an annual goal could be given a total dollar amount, dollars and cents, between 1 and 10 on a price card. Hunter would touch the correct number of dollar bills that corresponds with the next dollar with 90% accuracy over a certain time period. Okay? I'm going to go back. I just remember when I wanted to make a point, and I forgot to make the point. When you're doing, never mind. It'll come back to me, and I'll do it again. I need to write it down so I don't forget it. All right. So the annual goal we work with, we look at, this is not a, for each annual goal, if this is a post-school annual goal, we would have to have an annual goal on money. Does that make sense? We look at not only the annual goal, but we look at ways to evaluate how's the student, what's the criteria? You know, is the student never going to reach 100? If not, then why is that our criteria? Is there adaptations or something we can put in place? Penmanship. Really? Who writes anymore? What was that one show that used to be on Fringe, and one time they showed, oh, I think that's a pencil. They used to use that. That's where we're going, you all. So writing is not necessarily, I have students that use stamps to sign their names and stuff. So there's stuff out there.
Or writing with a pencil.
Writing with a pencil.
We went through that for years and years. Writing with pencil, writing with pencil. It's kind of like.
I don't even have a pencil.
Why can't she write with a felt tip? Because pushing down on the pencil was her problem. It wasn't the writing. So then we just put in her IEP that she would use a felt tip pen on everything.
Yeah, just no reason.
Yeah, I didn't have to call in IEP.
They're not even
anything.
teaching that.
We tried the pencil. We tried everything we could think of with the pencil, and then it was like, okay, by the time they get to middle school or high school, they're using pens more anyway.
Yeah.
Let's just go to a pen.
Yeah.
Quick question.
Yes.
Like one of Joshua's goals is given visual support such as a number line, Josh will use the next dollar strategy to make a purchase within the classroom in community settings with 80% accuracy. And he's like 100%, you know.
Well, if he's 100%, we go on to another skill.
But they're using a number line. Okay, so now I'm seeing his skills actually fall. He has to have a number line now. Anytime we do any kind of math or anything.
So they've got him prompt dependent on stuff.
So I asked for the number line to be I'm like, oh no, can't do that.
Well, yeah, that's a bit.
They take that away? I mean,
That's the goal. The goal is to use these supplementary aids and accommodation, okay, and then eventually fade those away so they either have something in place or they can do it themselves. And plus, I also want to know, can he do that across different settings? Again, 4 phases of learning: acquisition, fluency, generalization, and maintenance. Okay, we need to make sure they can generalize that skill they're learning and maintain it after time. Okay.
So Tony, his PT goals, the last, 4 or 5 years, they won't change. They catching a ball and walking up and down stairs, alternating feet.
No, what games does he like to play? I taught my
He can
students
do
how to
all
play
that,
cornball, anything but bowling.
It's not that, I mean, is he going to be able to continue with his education without being able to catch a ball?
Yeah.
Then
I'm
we
like,
don't
we
need
want
it.
something else.
Yeah.
Everything
It's
should
supposed
be
to pertain to their
educationally,
education.
yeah.
And the stairs,
I need to go with you all.
we found out he's scared of heights. And well, he's in the middle now. But they're like glass and you can see through them.
Oh, I couldn't do that. I couldn't do that.
Well, the back, so.
I don't care. I couldn't do that.
And I'm like,
I have sensory issues.
Holding on for dear life and
Yeah.
taking one.
So they're scaring him to death and making his life miserable every day.
Just about.
Can he get to the classroom
Yes.
without
Another
catching?
way.
Then
No,
Yeah.
Well,
no.
he's slow.
And-
He needs
matter.
to, you know.
They have to have it handicap accessible.
But
They
he
have to be
can,
Well, he
we've
walks up.
seen him do it, like alternate, but he don't like, he
He just
prefers
don't
to
like
take
to.
a side.
No, that's just work. That's where we work on fluency. You know, we got to get to the classroom before this bell rings. Let's see if we can do it. You make it. You teach them. That's the thing. They say, "Oh, he'll never be able to do it," and they don't think of anything else. But no, let's go on to something else.
Get a kitchen timer,
Yeah.
turn it on. Our goal is, we're going to make that classroom before it dings.
In your annual goals, you'll have a short-term objective or a benchmark, but you also have to figure out how you're going to evaluate whether or not your son and daughter has met that goal, okay? So that's data collection. And unfortunately, a lot of teachers don't do what we normally did. Every student's IEP was different because they all different have skills. I have seen where every IEP in the classroom is almost exactly the same. Yes.
How individual.
I have even seen IEPs with the incorrect student's name on it.
well, our first teacher told us there's nothing individual.
With the I.
I know, she said, that's just in theory.
So they should, on every IEP objective that your son and daughter has, they need to be collecting data to determine whether they're making progress or not.
So they should have data for the CBI.
This is what we call, this is something that we use a lot in the special ed world. It's called a task analysis. What'd you say? Going out in the community?
Yes.
If I'm going out on CBI and today he is learning how to make a deposit at the bank, I'm going to task analyze that. That means I'm going to figure out, I'm going to watch somebody do it, and I'm going to write down the steps. And then I'm going to think of my students, and then I'm going to write down the steps that I need to add or delete. And so I have a checklist. First step to the very last step. And as a special ed teacher, I'm going to teach that task all together. So if they don't do the first task correctly, I'm going to provide a prompt. If they don't do the next step properly, I'm going to wait for a second and provide a prompt. If they can't do it independently, I'm going to give them a verbal prompt. After a few seconds, they can't do it with a verbal prompt, I'm going to give them a model. And after a model, I'm going to show them, do it for them. Okay? So they should be collecting data. You can have so much awesome data about your son and daughters if a special ed teacher would just keep individual student data. Basically what they do now is they go over, sight words or multiplication. They go, oh, they got 90%. And when I come back and say, okay, that's great. So what do we need to work on yet? If he's getting 90%, that means he's reaching his goal. What's next? They can't tell me what's next. Or if a student is needing to have speech and language and they're going to, the speech and language person is going out in the community, because we have a field trip that day to the aquarium and we're talking about communication. Yeah, this is a great time to work on communication. We want to make sure that they have some kind of a data section. What are they working on? Did they greet people? Did they maintain conversation? Did they make eye contact? We can make task analysis for every skill a student does, and we can cut data on it. And when we use that, it tells me what the student cannot do. Well, you have to use physical prompts for all these steps right here. Let's figure out there's something going on. You need to analyze the data. You teachers need to analyze the data and see if the student's making progress, and if not, what do we need to do next, okay?
Are there actual forms that they can use for analyzing data?
Yeah, it's a task analysis. I can teach them,
is there something, so like every school has like a uniform, they have a general form. Okay.
I would just ask, do you have individual data on my student for their IEP?
Okay, so like my daughter's in preschool, and I'm actually having to come up with a report. I'm like, why is there not something that is a daily report back to me of these are the things she does? Instead, I'm having to create it, saying, these are the things I'm looking for. Why do I have to do that? Why is there not something?
You're not supposed to do that. They should be doing it.
Well, is there
But
something?
they should give you a copy of what her schedule is like every day.
Right, but an aide fills it out at the end of the day as they're getting on the bus.
Yeah.
And then a lot of times, I went back and I said, okay, I've got a journal here. Every day it says he had silent reading twice a day. He doesn't silent read. And why is he having it twice a day? And they went, oh, that's the aide fills it out. She writes that on everybody.
Yeah, we'll teach them how to collect data.
They are saying the wrong thing.
Did you put it in this conference summary that you would like to have a list of her schedule, a picture schedule?
Because they said she was going to be doing this many therapies, and I assumed that they would be giving me a daily report. So now I'm going, here's the daily report.
You can request that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I have to put it in the.
IEP.
So I have to call another meeting in order to get it.
Or ask them if you can do it without having an ARC meeting. If they won't do it, they say, okay, I want an ARC meeting.
Okay. For these other families, with the analysis, there is documentation that they should be getting. What you just described, did I have to model it? Did they do it on their own?
That is best. Those are best practices, evidence-based practices that schools are supposed to be using.
Right.
Depending on which college they went to and which program, they will know how to collect. If they went to UK, they know how to collect data.
Right.
On individual students. And as a teacher, how am I know whether the student's making progress if I don't take data?
Well, exactly.
And if I don't know why he's getting 50% and I don't know what steps he's missing, how can I teach those?
Right, and if you don't know, if you're not identifying which steps they're tripping up on.
Yeah.
Or which steps they're.
You can request it. Yeah, I love data. It has great information. Only with how are they going to measure it, how they're going to collect data and everything on. You have to talk about what are specially designed instruction. Especially in design instructions are those strategies we teachers use to teach a skill. And my biggest pet peeve is looking on that IEP, and there's a goal, let's say it's a goal learning next dollar strategy. And they have constant time delay, system of least prompts, visual cues, verbal prompts. They have all this stuff. That does not tell me anything. I want to know, because as a teacher, I'm using one of those strategies, and one of those strategies I use on a daily basis because it works. Tell them, you want to know what strategy are you using. I don't want a list of strategies that you can provide. Which strategy is working with him right now, okay? So, Especially design instruction. Yeah, like instruction using system of least prompts, using real dollar bills, community simulation, research so that we do community skills in the classroom, teach them in the classroom and in the community, the student will learn them faster. So those are examples. Always has down here, because of college and career readiness, which is a whole nother day we can talk about, we had to put whether or not the goal meets education and training, employment, or independent living in their post-school outcomes. So for each goal, we decide what this will fall under. So then you have what's called benchmarks. Can you go? Oh, no. We're at benchmarks. There's benchmarks and there's short-term objectives. For students with more significant disabilities or maybe more involved, I highly recommend short-term objectives because they tell you the condition, the student, the behavior we're looking at, the criteria in which that student has to get to meet that objective. Benchmarks are just like Johnny will write sentences using all capital letters for 10 days. Okay, so they're short and sweet. Short-term objectives have more meat to them, and it's really easier to take that if you ask me. So I've given you some examples of different types of short-term objectives. I also gave you a couple of examples of what it could be a benchmark. Hunter will touch the correct number of dollar bills that corresponds with the next dollar. So that's a benchmark. There's not a lot of meat. Short-term objective has meat. Annual goal. I'll just put some extra annual goals in here so you can look at those. The next thing is supplementary aids and services. We already talked about that they cannot deny students their supplementary aids or accommodations. However, in order for the student to use the supplementary aids and services on any, or their accommodations on any state testing or district testing, they have to be using that accommodation year-round. It can't just be used at the time of testing. If they just use it at the time of testing, your test scores will be kicked out. Okay? So, and we already talked about accommodations. Supplementary aids, maybe we need to have some visual supports. Maybe they have a visual calendar every day that they use a stamp or they use a crayon and mark off after they do each activity. That's a supplementary aid. Adaptive devices might be a choice board. We all want to give our students choices, but we never give them choices of getting out of the activity because we have to start working on appropriate choices from day one. So giving students choices like, hey, we're getting ready to work on math right now. Would you like to sit by yourself and work on the math book? Do you want to go back and work with the group back there, or would you like to get on the computer? Giving them choices of how they do the skills they need to do and when they can do them really helps, especially students who have behavior problems because they don't get anything. They're constantly, being told reactive. That's why we need to use positive behavior support. So that's accommodations and supplementary aids. And when you see anything that has on it that has KAR, that is the Kentucky Administrative Regulation. The Kentucky Administrative Regulations are how Kentucky, the state, is implementing IDEA. Okay, so you can go to the Kentucky Department of Education. You can put in KAR or Kentucky Administrative Regulations, and it will bring you up the law. So you can read the law at any time and interpret it the way you think it should be interpreted. But it's there. Use that.
What was it called?
It's Kentucky Administrative Regulations. I'm so sorry. I have a major dry mouth. Yeah, I'm almost done. And prior to entering the IEP, they'll probably send you some kind of a accommodation determination form to fill out prior to the meeting. A lot of times they just do it at the meeting. So accommodations for testing, readers, do they need interpreters, scribe, extended time? Again, in order to use these during state testing, they have to use them year-round. And then we talk about, is the student eligible for alternate assessment? There's a whole page you go through, Dimension A or Dimension B. Usually if they're nonverbal, it's Dimension B, and Dimension A is their verbal. And so just because a student is an alternate assessment does not mean they have to be placed in a MSD classroom. Education is a service, not a place. She was like, God, all I'm thinking about is education is a service, not a place. If I say it 6 times, they say you'll remember
What'd
it.
you say, MSD?
MSD, it's a moderate, see, in the schools, in the college setting, it's called moderate and severe disabilities. That's the type of certificate teachers get. In the school systems, they're called functionally mentally disabled. Why they can't, and it's different every state.
It's different.
Different school.
It's different, that's it, school to school. Okay,
Different
this
counties
is
say
really
different
important, program modification support for personnel. This also could be maybe for parents as well. If you do have a new communication device, everybody needs to be trained on it. So they have to provide training to you and all the teachers and students, maybe, friends, okay? Maybe you're working on different sensory activities to help the student get motivated to learn. I had a young man, right before he would have to go to work, he would start getting real agitated. And so we would do an activity before. I'd have him pick up a stack of books, and he'd have to take them to the library for me. And so he had to carry those heavy books, and he liked that. He had to stomp up the stairs. Here's your book. Oh, wait a minute. We want you to take some back. And so he brings some back. But that activity helped him calm down to where he was ready to go to work. So your occupational therapist should have a lot of those activities that they can do to help that. I still find my list. I had a list. School personnel will be trained to a highly structured behavior support plan. You have a behavior plan. Remember, we want to be positive and not reactive. School districts put, hey, this is what's going to happen if you do this, when they actually should be teaching a skill. In your behavior plan, this is what I want to make sure you understood. A behavior plan does not get rid of the behaviors. We teach a student a more appropriate skill to get what they need. If it's they're screaming all the time and asking questions, then let's teach them to hold a red card up when they need help, and that means I will go to give them help. Does that make sense? So we're going to put positive things. We're not going to wait for the behavior to happen and send them to the office, because we all know the office is where everybody wants to be anyway. I know, it's totally nuts. Oh, they're sending you to the office. Yeah, I'm going to have a great day. Yeah, you are. See you later.
Don't have to do math. Thank you.
No math for me today. Yep. Again, we have developed the IEP. Also in the IEP, you have to put how many minutes the student's going to be in special education and how many minutes they're going to be in regular education. That's on the IEP. So you need to make sure you check that box and make sure it's correct. It has to have the type of service, the minutes, how often, when you're going to do it, start, end date, who's going to provide it, and where. Okay? Any student can be in any general education class. It does not depend on their disability at all. It does not depend on whether they do alter assessment. They have this big thing out there, especially Fayette County. If you're in alter assessment, you have to be in an MSD classroom. Then how are you going to learn the core content to take the test? Special ed teacher is only going to be able to consult to get the information to bring it into the classroom. So why not do it where it's being delivered? So special education services, you have to determine how many minutes in and out of that special education class. So make sure you check that out and it's correct for your student. We also have a list of what kind of related services. It's very similar to the above, that, how many minutes, when do we start, who's going to do it, and where are we going to do it. You see right here, occupational therapy, occupational therapist, separate class. That tells me they're probably in the FMD classroom doing all their speech and language. Okay? Separate class. Oh, no. Resource room, community, gen ed classes, that's where we need to be working on related services. So those are the types of related services and how often they will get them. And then you also have to, after you do all the related services and you're winding down, we need to decide whether or not your son and daughter will be approved for extended school year. There's extended school services, which are tutoring after school, and it's in core content. Extended school year is based on that student not being able to recoup how well they're doing after a long break. Say after a Christmas break, Johnny, it took 5 months for him to learn how to do Dex Dollar again. He would qualify because he could not recoup that information within 6 weeks of returning. So be aware of that. They do not like to give extended school year.
Well,
but it happens.
And not to be negative, Millie, but
a lot of people fight for extended school year or request it, I shouldn't say fight, but request it. And, a lot of times you're going to, whatever school they choose for that district to be open for extended school year, with a different teacher, with different classmates, with everything is different. They're not with their teacher, they're not at their school, and then it's usually for 4 weeks. So in our case, the one year we did it, we had to be across town by 8 o'clock in the summer, and they actually had her in a janitor's closet because the other rooms were being
Used.
the floors were being stripped. And we went for 2 days because it was done by noon, and it was going to be over in 4 weeks. And it was so stressful on Emily because she didn't understand why she was there. She didn't know anybody was there. She was in a room with no windows. And so be careful, I guess, be careful what you ask for. It might be great. It might work out wonderful, but understand that that doesn't mean that they're going to be in their classroom with their school, with their teacher.
Using their materials.
For, you know, the idea is that the IEP goes to the extended school year teacher. Do they look at it? Don't know. Or are we just keeping these kids busy? So, I mean, it might be great for your kid. I don't want to play devil's advocate, but just that's some questions to ask.
We did it one time, and then ever since then, we have just had our own tutor, 2 hours a day, and all they work on is cognitive. And he's so far ahead by the time the year starts, and they're like, oh, he doesn't even qualify for it anymore. He does great, but by this time of the year, she's lost it. And so he gains it all.
On the opposite curve.
Yeah, he gains it all during the summer, and then school years when he loses it all.
But that's what we've done in the summer, is just get a tutor. We just our Michelle P. Fund, waiver fund.
And a statement you may use on your IEP for ESY, analysis IEP progress data and classroom performance show that Hunter requires prolonged reteaching in reading and math after breaks of instruction. So you have to have the data to show it. And that means teachers are supposed to be collecting data. Did y'all know that? Okay, so we got the ESY, understand that. We're going to finish up with our transition needs. 14 is what we're going over first. There are transition assessments that we want teachers to use. I developed the transition module for SPLASH teachers in Kentucky. That's our teachers who are the FMD teachers. They can go through this training, and it goes through behavior, IEP, transition, and everything. So I have a lot of that information if you need it on assessment. Do they have an ILP? Everybody has an ILP, okay? Again, for students with more significant disabilities, school districts are using a paper format. If that's something you want to use with your son and daughter when they get older, hopefully we'll have something in place by then.
You say everybody, I thought ILP is just when they get to high school.
Well, yeah, high school, 14 and on, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm transition year, sorry, 14 years. Yeah, they start in the 8th grade, the middle school level, at the middle school. So we have to check that. If they don't, then you need to make sure they have one. It's through Infinite Campus. I don't have anything with Infinite Campus. Does this transition focus on the course of study? That's why in the 8th grade, when you do that course of study, you're thinking, oh, Johnny might want to get a job. So we need to make sure he can get classes and also have time to go out in the community. That's why it's so important. Because they'll go back and say, well, you're taking away his core content information. When was the last time he was in that class? Oh, it's there. He's had behavior problems. Post-secondary goals, we start at 16. We need to either go over education and training, employment, or independent living. So there's examples. Upon completion of high school, Hunter's goal is to complete employment skills training and on-the-job training provided by the Office of Voc Rehab in order to work in a supportive employment position as a landscape assistant. That's what his goal is. And now we know what his goal is, then we know what we need to teach him in the regular IEP part. What kind of goals and objectives does he need to work on? Does he need to take a class in agriculture or something like that? Does he need to go to a training? And if student needs independent living skills, you also have to have one of those as well. Hunter goes to live in a supported living setting with 2 or 3 roommates to perform weekly personal shopping activities and assistance. So this is guiding my IEP development. So now I know that this is a goal also for him to be independent, so I need to be teaching him and providing him opportunities to learn these skills in his day. Does that make sense? Okay. Okay, down here we have the transition services that the school is going to do for that student to meet that post-secondary goal. A lot of times they put in stuff like completion, a monthly course study, community-based instruction, maybe individual advising on the individual learning plan. Maybe they want to be in the community work transition program that we have. Maybe we need to invite the agricultural teacher for participation in the transition fair. These are all the kind of little activities. You need to scroll up. It's okay. See, there they are. Okay, and it has the person who's responsible. If the school system is going to use a program that's outside the school system and they're not paying for it, like a few years ago, Supported Employment, Folk Rehab was going to work with Fayette County on a summer work program, but they didn't realize that the summer work program was going to be in a shelter workshop. OVR does not fund shelter workshops. And so after having all these ARC meetings and getting these students put in place for this program, OVR had to come back and say, we can't provide it. So that means the ARC needs to get back together and figure out another alternative. Okay. Oh, no water. Okay. 1 year before the student turns 18, this is one of the things I had to do when I was doing my practicum for special ed director. 1 year before any student turns 18, special ed department has to send out a letter to them and their parents saying, your son and daughter's legal rights will be given to them at the age of 18 unless you do some type of guardianship. Okay? So, and you just put the date on there when that's being done.
Which means we go to court and say if they're not competent to leave from the guardian.
Thank you.
Okay. Some things to think about. You know, if you want to make sure you understand what the purpose of your IEP meeting is. It goal or summary of academic performance? Is it looking at students, are they going to age out? I hate this in Kentucky. Students in Kentucky, some school districts let them go until the end of their 21st year is finished. Okay? And some school districts, as soon as you turn 21, you're out of here. What's up with that? That's stupid. I love things are stupid. So, you know, you might want to talk about those kind of issues. What type of diploma is your son and daughter going to be on? Again, alternate assessment means they're getting an alternate diploma and it has nothing behind it. And then the big thing right now also is college and career readiness. That we have a college and career ready model for 99% of our students in the nation and in Kentucky, but they do a college career readiness for students that are in the FMD classroom. So we're part of the college career ready team for the 1%ers. They're called 1%ers because it's usually just 1% of the population, the students on alternate assessment. And we have developed a college and career program for our teachers to start using starting at preschool and going all the way up. And school districts and the students will get points because now regular students get points if they're college career ready or college and career ready. Now, we're piloting in 4 different counties right now, and it's getting ready to roll out in 2017, so all school districts have to do it. And so there's going to be a lot of emphasis on, you know, do you want to go to college, what classes you need to take, what you need to have to get into college, if you're going to work, you know, what do we need to do for that as well.
So it's funding for the schools.
It's funding for the schools.
Schools have so much percentage of their students go to college, they get a point or whatever that relates to their funding at the end of the year. But kids in special education have not been included in that. So the committee that we're on is setting the guides and the testing and coming up with how you measure if they are college ready or not, so that schools will start getting a point for students on alternate assessment, which again holds that accountability to say we do expect these kids to not grow up into
in order for our students in the FMD classroom to be college career ready, they have to score high on what's called the transition attainment record, which is for the academic part, their core content information, and to be career ready, they have to get a job before they graduate. That's what
So they can still go to like a trade school or college with an alternate assessment?
Yeah.
Okay.
You don't let them bully you.
Don't let them bully you, by God.
Yeah, I mean, and, you know,
Stand up.
maybe we should come up with a network of parents that can go to ARC meetings during the day, and so that none of our parents, DSEC parents, have to go to the ARC. Maybe we can develop an advocacy group and have names put on it from all over the place, and trainings and stuff. So that's something I think we should
It's true,
do.
we've all learned more from other parents.
Yeah, I learned so much from parents.
You can go and not be so entwined in the emotional side of the
Right.
child,
Yeah.
emotional,
Yeah.
Yes.
but you can be listening.
That's what we said at the very beginning, is never go to an ARC by yourself. And I've done it.
that as,
Take your husband with you.
Well, and sometimes if you take a person with a different perspective too, that's not as, yeah, I mean, my husband's very even, but it's still his child, you know, so sometimes if you take somebody else that has a broader picture, it helps you.
We've gone 30 minutes over. I'm going to go ahead and do this drawing, and then